Bună seara! Vă mulțumesc că ați venit în număr așa de mare la un eveniment cu totul special din seria celor dedicate aniversării a 25 de ani de existență a colecției de literatură universală Biblioteca Polirom a editurii Polirom. Mulțumesc, în primul rând, foarte mult gazdelor noastre și totodată partenerilor noștri, librăriile Cărturești, pentru sprijinul deosebit acordat cu atâta bunăvoință. Evenimentul de față este dedicat operei unuia dintre scriitorii care s-au aflat de la bun început în portofoliul colecției, unul dintre pilonii, ca să zic așa, pe care s-a clădit Biblioteca Polirom în acest sfert de veac, scriitorul american J.D. Salinger. Celebru în toată lumea, publicat în milioane de exemplare, J.D. Salinger este autorul la 4 cărți, traduse în limba română și apărute în colecția Biblioteca Polirom. Romanul de veghe în lanul de secară, traducere de Cristian Ionescu, e vorba de o nouă traducere pe care am publicat-o în anul 2005. Mă uit după Cristi dacă este aici. Nu este. Freni și Zui, traducere de Mihaela Dumitrescu, 9 povestiri, traducere de Marcel Corniș-Pop și Dulgheri înălțați grinda acoperișului și Seymour, o prezentare, traducere de Antoaneta Ralian. Este o mare bucurie și o mare onoare pentru noi să-i avem ca actori principali ai evenimentului din această seară, eveniment care se va desfășura sub forma unui dialog, pe Matt Salinger, actor și producător de film, fiul lui J.D. Salinger, un păstrător și promotor al moștenirii literare a tatălui său, și pe scriitorul Mircea Cărtărescu. Le mulțumesc foarte mult! Cărțile lui J.D. Salinger sunt publicate în România prin intermediul Simona KESSLER International Copyright Agency, reprezentat aici de Simona KESSLER și de Andreea Focșăneanu, Alina Mihai, Roxana Saranagiu, Alexandra Dumitru. Le mulțumesc foarte mult pentru colaborarea extraordinară de-a lungul a 2 decenii. O rog, înainte de toate, pe doamna Simona KESSLER să ne spună câteva cuvinte în deschidere.
Bună seara! Și eu vă mulțumesc din suflet că ați venit atât de mulți în această seară. Acum vreo 10 zile am primit din senin un e-mail de la Matt Salinger care anunța că va fi la București pentru filmări. Că programul său însă va fi foarte încărcat și mai ales impredictibil, pe scurt, crazy cu litere mari. Dar că ar fi foarte bucuros să-l întâlnească pe editorul său de la editura Polirom, care păstorește opera tatălui său. Nu pot să vă spun ce bucurie pe capul meu. Am intrat într-o frenezie demnă de Miss Dalloway și am pregătit un mic festin cu multe șnițele pentru Matt și Dan CROITORU, actualul editor al operelor lui Salinger, și Bogdan Stănescu, fostul. Dar știți cum e cu bucuria, ea se cere împărtășită, așa că m-am gândit cine s-ar bucura mai mult să-l întâlnească pe Matt Salinger decât Mircea Cărtărescu, un mare admirator al operei lui Salinger de ani buni. Acum 10-12 ani ai declarat pentru Time Magazine că a citit Franny and Zoe de cel puțin 10 ori, că o știe aproape pe de rost, că este ca un fel de evanghelie pentru el. Iar în De ce iubim femeile vorbește despre inclasificabilul salingerian, cu rapel la The Unclassifiable Great Beauty at First Sight din povestirea The Laughing Man. Așa mi-a venit ideea acestei întâlniri inclasificabile. Despre Salinger s-a spus foarte mult și de-a lungul anilor, printre altele că este un Tolstoi american, pentru care care a făcut din tăcere o operă de artă în sine. Matt, fiul său, a stat de veghe în lanul de secară al acestei tăceri aproape întreaga sa viață. Așa că îi mulțumesc din suflet că a venit și a acceptat invitația la acest dialog at first sight cu Mircea și sper să fie și pentru voi o seară memorabilă azi, aici, în cea mai lungă zi a anului. Vă mulțumesc!
Okay, thank you, Simona. Thank you, Dan, for having us this night. I thank everyone who's here. We'll have this talk half in English, half in my personal English, which is, as you see, kind of creative, not always in the good meaning of the word. But I'll try to do my best and make myself understood. I'm really very happy and thrilled to be here to share the stage with someone who is absolutely special, who made us an unexpected gift this evening with Matt Salinger, the son of J.D. Salinger, a writer whom I'm not the only huge fan. All of us, all of you are, and everyone in this big world, I think it's a big fan. Salinger is one of those writers who are really loved, who are not only important writers or I don't know, writers who are studied in schools and in college and so on, but who are really loved, who are, well, understood or misunderstood by people, but who doesn't let anyone indifferent. Anyone has to say something about what he or she gathered from Salinger's books about their aesthetic, but not only aesthetic, but also moral, political consequences, about the lights and the highlights and the shadows of his work. So I'm really thrilled to have a discussion with Matt this evening, and I hope it will be a very nice event for you too. I will be starting with a quotation. I'm not a nerd who is seeking for revenge, but I think that the nicest beginning for our talk will be by mentioning that you are not only the son of your father, but one of his characters. You are present in your father's work only once, it's true, but you have a big presence, not in the body of his work, but in a dedication. In one of the most beautiful dedications that I have ever read, a dedication that Salinger wrote in the beginning of his most wonderful book, in my opinion, Franny and Zooey.
Mine too.
Yes, I think it's the paramount of his work, where he mentions the very the very young Matthew, who was 1 year old by that time, and who becomes a living parable in a way for innocence and for I would say luminousness, if there's such a word in English. I will quote it because it's very, very nice, and I will say some words about it afterwards. As nearly as possible, in the spirit of Mircea Salinger, age 1, urging a luncheon companion to accept a cool lima bean, I urge my editor, mentor, and heaven help him, closest friend, William Shawn, genius domus of the New Yorker, lover of the long shot, protector of the unprolific, defender of the hopelessly flamboyant, most unreasonably modest of born great artist editors, to accept this pretty skimpy-looking book. It's a very funny way of thanking a very big friend and protector of Salinger, the director of the New Yorker magazine. So you are present from the very beginning in your father's not only work but thoughts, because reading this dedication, I cannot stop myself thinking that he was very proud of you. From the very beginning, he was very proud for having a child, for having a son. So I think it was extraordinary for a enormous writer to insert an emotional and a personal content in this dedication, opening one of his most beautiful and most wise book. So this is what struck me as being very important when beginning a talk with you. And the second one is your profession. The second one is your profession. I'm very eager to find out more about how you chose your profession of an actor, fundamentally an actor, and if your father's work has anything to do with it, because I know that your father was also watching TV many times in his bunker, and enjoying, I was very ironic about it, enjoying the play of the actors, enjoying the TV shows, enjoying the movies and so on. And when he wrote about his beloved Glass family, of course he always stressed the characters that embraced the profession of an actor. Even the ancestor of this family, the clown Zozo, who lived in the 19th or maybe in the 18th century, he was an actor in the world of the circus. And Les and his wife, the mother and father of the Glass family, were also actors. They were playing in vaudevilles. The vaudeville is a very interesting, very specific, very eclectic way of acting, including dancing and singing and so on. And the 7 children of the Glass family were all full of talents. They were all dancing, they were all singing all the time. When they had the anniversaries or some other things, they were acting. And besides, 2 of them, the youngest of them, were professional actors. I mean Zui, Zacharias, and Franny, Frances, who actually has a breakdown and refuses to act anymore until Zoe decides her to go on, because acting was her dharma, was her duty. So an actor should act. So I want to ask you, was your father and his work important in choosing your career and leading your life?
Well, my father was important to me for many reasons. Let me just say two things first, though. One, I sometimes am uncomfortable in venues like this because people have a way of referring to me or asking me things as though I were he. I am not my father, and I don't presume to be my father. I never, I didn't, certainly don't have the talent to write as he
but
did.
you look very, very much like him.
Do I? Well,
Yeah.
thank you. But I was a fan of his writing from the first time I read it. So I feel a camaraderie with all of you here in that sense. I'm just one other fan who happened to have known him a whole lot better than anyone here. But so that's just a general sort of caveat that I want to throw out there. Did I, you know, of course I was hugely influenced by him. He was my father, and I loved him and still do. And not everyone loves their parents. Not everyone admires their parents, even if they do love them. I was lucky to feel both things. My father acted when he was young, in school, in college. My mother acted in school, so they were less horrified by the idea than many other parents might have been. They were worried for me because it's not a sure path to financial security. But he understood that also. He loved good acting. He felt of certain actors in certain films as being every bit as much a friend to him as anybody who was quote unquote real. That's a whole other subject. My father's understanding and beliefs about what is and what is not reality are different than most people's. So, but anyway, that's another topic. But he loved good acting. He felt of them as friends, just like he felt of certain authors, like, you know, Kafka or Tolstoy or Sid Perelman, a good friend of his. He had very eclectic tastes. And when he was feeling blue or lonely, he would go to a bookshelf and pick something out as though it were a friend. And he would read that book and it would change his demeanor and attitude. So he had a respect for good acting and a love for good acting and good actors that I couldn't help but notice and be affected by. I grew up, you know, many of you here are quite young and you grew up with videotapes or DVDs. When I was young, there were no such things. But my father had a 16mm film collection with hundreds of films, you know, these big, you know, reel-to-reel things. And once or twice a week, we would watch one of his films. He had an agreement with the Film Society up at the local college, Dartmouth College, where he would lend them films and he would borrow films from Dartmouth. So I became a bit of I won't say a film connoisseur, but certainly a film appreciator quite young. And yeah, we'd go to plays when we would go to New York. So it was something that I cared about from a young age and was exposed to at a young age, and wasn't taught by either parent that it was a dream or a forbidden thing. It was within the realm of possibilities and of interest.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for it. If you allow me, I would inform the people in front of us about some of your whereabouts. Matt has an impressive formal education. He graduated from the Phillips Academy, Andover. He followed for some time the Princeton University, and then he graduated also from the Columbia University, where he obtained a degree in the history of arts, if I'm not wrong, and in drama. So I think your very high education helped you in a way to have a view, a larger view on the world and on the world of the arts, generally speaking. And he acted in lots of movies. I was impressed when I have to confess, I used the Wikipedia like everyone to gather some data about you. So you acted in lots of movies. Many of you will be surprised to know that he was Captain America. He was Captain America in a movie made in 1990, if I'm not wrong, and he became famous even before it in a movie, a teenager movie called Revenge of the Nerds. But after that, he was in lots of movies, all kinds of movies, action movies, for example, psychological movies. One of the latest is The Ice Road. I heard very good things about this one. Then he was acting in television shows like Law and Order, very well known by our public, and many others. And then in theater, he had quite a long career as an actor and a producer at the same time, acting and producing, for example, The Syringa Tree, a play who was showed in many places in the States. And Europe, yes. So this background made me think that that you are a brave man. That you are a brave man. And let me explain a bit. It's maybe a truism, but to be the son of such a celebrated, such an illustrious father must be hard, must be rather hard. Of course, you took advantage of his personality, his charisma, his wonderful good influence on you. But at the same time, I think I don't have this experience. My father was not in the field of arts, or he wasn't famous for anything, but he was a good father. But if you have to carry your father on your back, like in Virgil's Aeneid, I think it's a bit hard. You have to be a brave person to succeed in life, to do the best that you can for being yourself, not the son of your father. for having a career, for having achievements of your own. Not to be seen all the time like a sort of a prolongation of your father. Extension, yes, sorry, I forgot the word. I'm preoccupied with this because I myself have a son who is in front of us and who debuted as a poet, and I think many times that I'm not Salinger anyway, but it's hard to be the son of a mother who is a writer and a father who is a writer, because not only because everybody expects that you get to the height of your parents, but because you feel the need to show your parents that you can, to prove him or her, your mother, that you are able to succeed yourself in what you in the field that you work. Isn't anything like that? As I said.
Well, thank you. A couple of things. I mean, I wouldn't say it was burdensome to be my father's son. You know, people are born into families of great poverty, of great abuse. I was lucky in so many ways. So to me, there's no bravery there. There's some good fortune. To find my way in the world outside of his shadow, you know, is an ongoing process. But it's one that he supported, and it's one that every child has to do, you know. And I think he wrote about it beautifully. I think one of the reasons his works are so enduringly popular is because young people across the world recognize in his characters other young people that are trying to make a path for themselves in the world, in a very uncertain world, in a very fraught world, in a very dark world sometimes. And it's been amazing, especially during the year of his centennial in 2019. I traveled around the world, and I had so many people coming up to me in you know, wherever it was, in China and Spain and Italy. I didn't come to Romania, but who said, you know, I felt like your father wrote this to me. This is my story. This is my reality. And I think the reason for that, and I never take that for granted, and I always want to listen to them. I want to hear their story about why that is and what they responded to, because each one is unique, and many of them completely misunderstand his work, but it's no less meaningful to them for having misunderstood it. And they're entitled to their opinion. It's no less valid than my own opinion or yours. That's what art is. It exists in the mind of the artist, and then it has to be received. And it's just a seed that then takes flower in the mind and brain and soul of the viewer or the reader, in this case. So that's always fun. You know, sometimes it requires some limited bravery to get up in front of people, and you know, being an actor, you're not up in front of people because you're playing a character. It's that character that is up in front of people, and so you can actually hide pretty well by playing a character. Here tonight, I'm not playing a character, but there's no bravery. I mean, you people are here because you loved my father's writing, and that's why I'm here also.
Thank you. I think that we should talk a bit about the life of your father and then return to his work, because they are connected, of course, very, very deeply connected. As far as I know about him, he was a person who suffered a lot from many plans and in many ways in his life. First, he was an officer during the Second World War, an intelligence officer on the European theater of the war, where he was forced to face the hell, the real hell. He was, as far as I know, one of the first Americans who became aware of the existence of the concentration camps, and who went there. He saw the horror with his own eyes. So he experienced the horror of the Nazism by himself, and besides, his job in that war was to interrogate people in Germany, trying to find out if they were Nazis and they committed crimes. So he, a very innocent person, a young man, as many of you are here in this room, was not only a combatant in a very, very vicious and violent war, but also he discovered the immense human cruelty, what a man can do to another man. And I think he never really recovered from this absolutely terrible experience. Of course, maybe you all know that he had a breakdown because of that, and he was put in a hospital.
I don't know that.
You don't know? Yes, it's from Salerno and the others. Yes, if you don't know, I don't either. So anyway, he suffered a lot. These are facts. He experienced the horrors of the war, the biggest of them. At the same time, it was that horrible like the other one, experience in his romantic life. That terrible experience with Una O'Neill. You thought about the other one with the German, his first German wife.
I didn't know where you were going. I just knew I didn't like it.
Okay. So both of them were terrible. So he was very much in love.
I don't know how terrible they were. Una O'Neill broke his heart. I mean,
well,
who doesn't get their heart broken?
Losing a love is also terrible, in my opinion.
True.
Yes, and can be, well, eviscerating, I would say. So he had a romantic affair with Una O'Neill, the daughter of Eugene O'Neill, the famous playwright. And he found out during the war, when he was a soldier, that Una O'Neill married Charles Chaplin. So he suffered also this terrible shock, because he was very much involved with a beautiful girl that was very famous by that time in the circles. She was a socialite. She was very famous in the circles. The New York circles and so on. She was the debutante of the year while Salinger was fighting in the war. But it seems that she really loved Chaplin. She had 8 children with him, and they were happy ever after. And then it was this very strange marriage. I hope this is true indeed. A strange marriage with a German woman. It was a very short marriage, but I think it was very shocking for Salinger because he divorced in a month or something, and people say that it was because he found out some unpleasant facts about her. I don't get into details because maybe they are not true. Okay, and of course, I think as a writer, I think one of the most terrible moments in his life was when he published Franny and Zooey, and the book has a tremendous success. It stayed for tens of weeks in the New York top of the books, and his colleagues, the other writers like John Updike and many others, were launching very vicious attacks on him because he became too popular, he became too famous, and they couldn't stomach it. So as a writer, and some of you here who are also writers and artists can imagine, he must have been very hurt. He must have been very hurt, and he must have felt a lot of injustice because Franny and of course Zooey are masterpieces. In my opinion, Updike, who is a very important writer, could never have dreamed to get to the wisdom and to the depth of Franny and Zooey. And maybe he suffered very much because by that time, actually, around this moment, I think he started to think of not publishing anymore. And he only published another book, Race High, the Rubin Carpenter, and Seymour, an introduction. And then what many people consider a catastrophe happened. He published Hepworth in a complete silence. Nobody commented on it. Nobody had to say a word about it. But I have to confess and to tell you that I also like Hepworth. I also like it because I think that an important writer should be loved for his whole work, or her whole work, of course. If you love only one line from a poet, you have to love all that poet's work. If a writer or an artist has only one thing, a work of genius, he is a genius or she is a genius. So I think even Hepworth, who was despised by everyone, has its role, has its place in his work. It is very interesting to read because it's how he imagined that a child who is not human, actually, who is a sort of a bodhisattva, could think about all kinds of things. So I would ask you, dear Matt, I would provoke you in a way to tell us a sort of a, I'd say a top of your father's works, including what you like or maybe what you don't like from his work. You just told us that you love Franny and Zooey, but what about the other works of your father?
Wow, that was a lot. Your English is great. It's fantastic.
I know my limits.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to pick holes in some of the history, in quotation marks, that you shared, because it comes from, you know, books like this written by people that never knew him and never would, who interviewed people that barely knew him. Nobody that loved my father, you know, would speak to a author of a book like that. So they're at a disadvantage from the get-go. What do? They either tell their publisher that they can't deliver, but they've already taken an advance, and they've already bought a new house or a car or whatever, and so they either go to the quote-unquote facts that other people have reported on that didn't know a goddamn thing, or they make them up, or they do the best they can in many cases. But the best they can doesn't make something the truth or a fact. My father didn't learn, quote-unquote, that one of the reasons he left his first wife was because she had been a Gestapo informant. He didn't learn that until he read it in a book that my sister wrote about him. And first he laughed. He had a great laugh. And by that time, you know, I think he knew a lot about the world and about human nature and humanity and the human condition from his reading. He read voraciously from the time he was a little boy and read everything. So yes, the war informed him to a great degree, and seeing what men and women are capable of had an impact on him, but I don't think any of it was a surprise to him, because he'd read about similar things. You are all literate people, I would like to assume, because you're here. The more you read great books and great artists, the more you learn about the human condition and the less you're shocked. I told an interviewer today, I wonder if he's here. He said he might come. Yeah, there he is. I told him today that when Trump was elected, and everybody was saying, how could this happen? How could this happen? You know, what have we done? You know, I imagine many places in the world are thinking that now about their own leaders. But I called my sister because I knew that I would have an ear to, I said, you know, I've been thinking about Daddy all day today. And she just shrieked on the phone and said, me too, me too. I said, he's the only person I can think of that wouldn't have been, and he was already dead at that point, thank God, but he wouldn't have been surprised in the least that a country could elect somebody like Trump, because he had read about similar things and he had an understanding of human nature. Was it gruesome and impactful and brutal to land on D-Day and go through that? Was it gruesome and horrible to liberate a concentration camp and see piles of bodies and have emaciated people coming up to him? You know, he was half Jewish, and I don't think that entered into it at all. He just saw what humans did to humans. I don't think he was more impacted by it because he was a half Jew. Yeah, so I mean, he did have. I don't think he had a breakdown. I remember when I was in college, I was exhausted from writing some papers and checked myself into the infirmary, and I called him to let him know in case they called him to tell him or something. I didn't want him to be alarmed. And he said, "Oh, Matt, that's so smart of you. I did the same thing after World War II. I did the same damn thing." He wanted to go someplace with clean sheets where people would feed him and where he didn't have to see to borrow a word from one of his titles, the squalor. For Esme with Love and Squalor. Was he profoundly affected by it? Yes. Did he awaken in the night sometimes from nightmares? Yes. He had his hand shook a little bit right after the war, but I don't know if that was a breakdown or not. Certain things start when they enter into the world of what is a fact. They take on a life of their own, and now it's a fact that he had a breakdown. I don't know that, but if he did, he deserved it, and he got over it, and I think we're all the better for it because he shared some things he learned through it. I forgot your question, but does that answer any of it?
What you like and what you don't from his work.
Thanks. It doesn't matter what I like and what I don't. You each need to decide that for yourselves. I reject that Hapworth was a failure. I think it's a beautiful story. One of the books he had thought of and spent some time working on, Hapworth was going to be an introduction for. He was going to revise Hapworth. And he wasn't inured to criticism. I mean, he told me some things that one critic or another said, but he said he didn't care, and I think that's true. Was he impacted by the Updikes of the world? Yeah, he had a nickname for Updike that I won't share. He felt their jealousy. He thought of them as sort of a club. He was always an outsider in his own mind. And he felt that the best artists are usually outsiders. And he said, Updike belongs to every goddamn country club, he can find. My father never belonged to a country club, never would have wanted to. He forged his own path. Do I think he was sensitive to some of that? Yes. I'm sure the older J.D. Salinger would have told the younger one to snap out of it and who gives a damn? But the younger one, who was still making a name for himself, I think he did care. Any artists, when you spend all months and years working on something and loving it in the multiple meanings of the word loving, like Romancing the Stone has other, he would polish things and work on things and live with them and with the utmost care and meticulousness. So to present something like that to the public and have somebody go like that, the younger him, questioned whether it was worth continuing to produce works that he shared if they weren't going to be met with not the respect, he didn't care about respect, but the care and the thoughtfulness that he thought they deserved. And that's something he struggled with to the day he died. He went back and forth between wanting to burn everything and wanting to publish before he died. he did neither, and left that to me. Well, he did burn some things during his life, but anyway. So what I do love Franny and Zooey, but I love Catching the Rye too, and I love Faresme. Oh, was that me that was making that noise? Oh God, sorry.
Okay.
I love Franny and Zooey. I loved Faresme with Love and Squalor. Those are two probably closest to my heart, but Catcher is wonderful. I hear his voice, his speaking voice, the clearest when I read Seymour, an introduction, and Raise High the Roof Beam Carpenters. It's as though he's talking to me. It's as though he's reading it to me. So I love those for that reason. But even some of the works that he never allowed to be republished that came out in magazines when he was young, and he had a very public lawsuit over when he prevented other people from printing them. They embarrassed him. Some of them embarrassed him. They were works of a young man who learned a lot subsequently, and he didn't want those to be shared. But I read them, and I get a lot out of them, and I laugh, and I enjoy them, and they're better than a lot of what are thought to be, classics by some other authors. So I because I loved him, I love all his work. Am I able to discriminate between what I think is brilliant and what I think is just good? Yes. But that doesn't matter. You all should decide that for yourselves when you read something and not be told.
Yes, Faresme with Love and Squalor is also my favorite within his 9 stories. Actually, I think in 9 stories there are 4 works of genius. Esme is maybe the first one, and you should read it. It's absolutely fantastic. The best dialogue that I ever read in a work of fiction, and the most beautiful ending. The most beautiful ending when over the years he goes to the wedding of the main character. Then it's the Douanier Smith Blue Period, which is absolutely funny. It's the funniest thing I've ever read. Also, it's about a youngster, a young guy who wanted to do painting, to draw and to paint, who gets enrolled in a school of painting led by 2 Japanese people. And what happens there and who are his first students, it's absolutely hilarious. It's absolutely funny. How you say, I laughed my brains out when reading it.
We're a little more crude.
Yes, I know it, but we are in public now. Okay. And then it's Uncle Wiggily in Connecticut, which is also a fine piece of literature. And of course, it's the most well-known story ever written by Salinger, A Perfect Day for Banana Fish, which includes a dialogue on the telephone between Muriel, his fiancée, and her mother, which is also full of cliches, full of everything. It's phony, as Holden would say, in the American life. And the other one is The Laughing Man. And I would ask you if acting in Captain America has a connection with the Laughing Man, because the Laughing Man is about the pulp fiction in America, about those heroes that were everywhere in the 20s and 30s in pulp magazines, and who are now on the screen all the time. So you could answer a bit later, because I would say that those four pieces of fine literature were very much influential for my own writing. And besides, I love Franny and Zui very much, because I think Vedanta and the other Oriental sapiential literatures that he read and became devoted to them by that time had a huge influence of Zui, mostly on Zui, and explain everything in the spiritual evolution of the characters. And then, of course, Seymour is in my opinion, it's okay, Seymour, an introduction. It's full of love. It's full of love. It's full of the wish, the impossible wish to express love in literature. The impossible wish to say how much you love someone, how much you're grateful to someone, how much body loves Seymour, because this is the core of this story. And of course, I love Holden. I love Holden during the war, as far as I know. But maybe this is also a fake fact. He was carrying the manuscript, the first four chapters of the manuscript with him under his shirt. Salerno said, and which he finished after the war. I think Holden is the most rooted in the American tradition of all Salinger's work and all Salinger's characters. His voice reminds us of Huckleberry Finn's voice. He's very close to Huckleberry Finn. Huck Finn was a rebel. He was a rebel. He was against society. He was against the phonies of his time, like Holden did. But Holden raised this game on another level, on a higher level. So what I loved best, the page I loved best in The Catcher in the Rye, is that one when Holden meets a girlfriend and Sally, yes, he meets Sally and proposes her to run away in the wilderness somewhere. And during this time, he would work as a gas pump, pretending he was deaf and dumb. He was deaf and dumb, so nobody would speak to him. He wanted to isolate himself from the whole world of the phonies, of the people who mystified the truth and the realities, the reality as he imagined them. So that was, it's always my favorite among everything he wrote. I will tell you the page which influenced me the most in everything that I thought about my art, about literature. It's when Buddy and Seymour, at the beginning of the Second World War, went to be drafted to the military. So when going to that office, they had to fill in some forms. And they were asked to write something at the chapter profession. And Buddy said, writer. He wrote at that rubric, I don't know how to call it.
The box?
Yes, yes, he said writer. And Seymour started to laugh. And Buddy asked him, why do you laugh? I'm a professional writer. Yes, but since when is writing your profession? I always thought it was your religion. These words are absolutely definitory for what I think about art, what I think about writing. And I think if you do not take your duty as a writer, as an artist, as a kind of a religion, you are not a perfect writer. You are not a perfect artist. You have to have not only the feeling that you did your duty, but you also have the feeling that it's not you who writes your pages, who have written your books. It's not you who act in front of the cameras. It's someone bigger, better, and wiser than you. I learned this from Salinger.
Yeah, beautiful. You understand him so well, and what you like of his work makes me want to read your work, because I know I'll like it. You did, thank you. In English?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Wow. Yeah, I would say one more thing just about which books do I like more and which ones less, or which one, you know, when you love someone, and I'm not thinking about me, and I'm just thinking, when you read a book and something about the experience impacts you to a great degree, in a profound way, you want to spend more time in that world that you entered. You want to spend more time with that person, with that, not even a person, but that soul, with that mind, with that intellect, with that sense you get, that presence. And you get that when you read anything of a given author. So I agree with you when you say, if you like one line of somebody's poetry, you should want to read all the rest. Franny and Zooey, 9 stories. It saddens me sometimes when people have only read The Catcher in the Rye. I think it's an underrated book in some ways because it's more profound than people think of it. But the other works of his, you should. Well, now I really am sounding like a promoter, and I don't mean to, because I'm not here to sell copies. I'm here to share who he was and what he cared about and what he thought was important. And if you care about that in one, you'll find it even more so in some of the others, I think.
Thank you so much, dear Matt. I think we had a very nice discussion, and you are a gift for us, for all of us. You don't imagine how important are you for us, and how much the people enjoyed you hearing you talking and hearing you saying things that no one can say about your father but yourself, because you know him from your childhood and from your adolescence. And I was very much impressed how much you understand your father, because sometimes between fathers and sons there are misunderstandings and so on. But I'm so pleased that you are in a complete solidarity with who was, what did, and what masterpieces wrote your father. Thank you so much, and I thank everybody that made us this wonderful gift today, and I thank you, all of you. Thank you for your patience, and I hope we had a beautiful evening together. Thank you.
And I want to thank you. This was really, I really enjoyed it.
Vă mulțumim foarte mult, suntem foarte recunoscători. Deeply grateful to you both of you. Am convenit că luăm 2-3 întrebări din public despre opera lui J.D. Salinger, despre cărțile lui J.D. Salinger pe care le publicăm la editura Polirom în colecția Biblioteca Polirom, care împlinește anul acesta 25 de ani de existență. Vă rog.
Thank you very much to, Thank you very much to both of you for this very interesting discussion. The question is the following. I gifted The Catcher in the Rye to several children, adolescents from friends of mine. I was wondering at which age did you read The Catcher in the Rye, and what was the effect on you having your father near you, probably, when you read it. But also related with it and slightly different is the fact that one possible reading of the book that I thought of it is the fact that it might be that The Catcher in the Rye could have been, possibly, a reaction to the war. I've seen that it was published, serialized in 45-46 and novelized in 51. I wonder to what extent that kind of spirit of liberation, that kind of spirit of something else, I want to come out and show who I am and rebel about it, was a rebellion against what he suffered or witnessed during his experience in the war. And could that be seen as a kind of in a very, very alternative interpretation of the novel as a war novel, as a reaction to it?
Thank you. The second one's more interesting to me than the first, but I'll answer the first one first. I went away to school at a very young age, at least for the United States. I went to a boarding school when I was 12. My sister gave me the book as I was leaving. My mother was driving me, my mother was driving me. And she said, you know, you're going to get a lot of questions about this. You should probably read it before you go. So I read it in the car on the way to I was 12. I laughed my ass off. Yeah, we're in polite Southern, but I laughed a lot in the car. And my mother enjoyed, and my mother and father were divorced at that point. So anyway, she enjoyed my enjoyment of it. I'll say that. Your second question, you know, people should feel free to make whatever they want of any work of art, I think. And if somebody wants to think of it as a war novel, think of it as a war novel.
How do you feel knowing him?
Knowing him, he rebelled against authority figures from the time he was born. He didn't have to go into the military or go through a war to have that part of his character. He didn't like being told what to do by anybody, and that applied to editors in his professional life and typesetters. I mean, he was very exacting about everything having to do with the book. Do I think the war informed it? Yes, but no more than what he already had come to know about the human condition and humanity.
Thank you. Mai vrea cineva să pună o întrebare? Trebuie să ne gândim că la 8:30 trebuie să închidem.
I was going to say I was going to get off easy.
Hi. Oh, thank you so much for such an interesting evening and for this conversation. My question relates to like your philosophy around preserving your dad's legacy and around particularly the unpublished works. So I'm not going to ask you like when are they going to be published, but
you're welcome to.
I'm more interested in how you see that, like what role this particular like role plays in your life, like that of being like his son, and how you manage to fit in with the rest of your responsibilities and with your job this part about publishing his unpublished works and really like bringing them to the world.
Well, the reality is, for the last 10 years or so, it has become my job. I'm here acting in a movie. I play a dance coach for a ballroom dancing team. Actually, the couple that I was coaching were two-time world champions, Cosmin and Alessia. Probably not. You don't even know who they are, and you should, because my God, they're astounding dancers, and they should be national treasures. But you know, it's not an Olympic sport yet, so people don't pay much attention. But they're just gorgeous to watch. But this is very much a vacation for me from my work, which has been working on my father's stuff. I take the preserving and protecting a hell of a lot more seriously than I do the promoting. To me, the works promote themselves. If you read them, you know, you want to read the other. I mean, I love Franny and Zooey, so I want more people to read Franny and Zooey, so I say that a lot. But if you don't read it, you don't read it. You know, that's fine. The work on, you know, pulling his work together is tedious and long and exacting. I mean, he wrote for 40 some odd years without publishing. So there's, you know, tens of thousands of pages. You know, by a page, I don't mean a whole, you know, sometimes a page is just a paragraph or a sentence, but there's a lot of material that he never put into order to publish, because he had never quite decided how or what he wanted to do, or when, or whether, in fact. So I'm doing that. It actually sent me to the hospital at one point. I was getting, you know, arthritis in my wrist from typing. A lot of his notes were handwritten, so I've had to transcribe them. It's been often tedious work, but I have good company when I'm doing it. I have his company. I'm reading his words and laughing and enjoying them, as I hope you all will when you read them. Everyone shies away from this question, and I have no problem answering it. You know, they are coming. I shouldn't say they, because that implies that they will be individual different works, and I don't know yet. But everything that he wrote will be shared and published. I'm sure within the next, well, sure. I don't want to overpromise, but I hope in as little as 3 years, and certainly in the next 5 or 6 years, everything will be published. And then you decide for yourselves what. But if you love his work, you will enjoy and feel a sense of discovery and happiness when you read it, even if you're disappointed that it's not this or it's not that. What it is will mean everything if you love his current writing.
Well, if you allow me, what I could gather from these rumors that circulate around those undisclosed, unpublished works of J.D. Salinger, there's a rumor about a book summarizing all the stories about the Glass family and adding a number of other stories under the title The Family Glass.
Total nonsense.
Okay. Another one would be a manual of Vedanta.
Total nonsense.
Okay, and the third one that I know of is a book about the World War II.
Even more ridiculous nonsense.
Yes, it's a very precious answer for me.
And, you know, take care about what you read and then tell people about as fact. I mean, this execrable bit of promotion. People saw what was promised at the end of this book and wrote to me about it. And I bitterly resent that this guy took it upon himself to come up with something completely false, say that it was true and that he had it on great authority, because it puts thoughts in all of your... I want people to come to his work with a total open mind and open slate and not have any expectations. So I try to speak very little about it. I can only say that I'm really enjoying reading what I'm reading, and I think a lot of other people will too.
Cred că ar trebui să încheiem pe această notă întâlnirea noastră de astăzi, dialogul extraordinar dintre Mircea Cărtărescu și Matt Salinger. Le mulțumesc foarte mult. Matt, mulțumesc foarte mult pentru efortul extraordinar pe care l-ai făcut în aceste zile de promovare a operei a tatălui tău tradusă în limba română. Mircea Cărtărescu, vă asigur de toată recunoștința noastră că ați acceptat să purtați acest dialog cu Matt Salinger. Așa din scurt, vă mulțumesc tuturor, mulțumesc încă o dată gazelor noastre și partenerii noștri, librăriile cărturești, pentru organizare și pentru promovarea evenimentului. Vă mulțumesc tuturor că ați fost parte a acestui eveniment care se înscrie în seria de evenimente dedicate aniversării a 25 de ani de existență a colecției de literatură universală Biblioteca Poliroma, editurii Polirom. Vă mulțumesc foarte mult!